Yeah.
Cool. So we are live. Hey everyone, welcome back to 22nd episode of Tech Talks with Santosh and second of the year. So today we have a very special guest today, Martin Woodward. So thanks a lot for joining, Martin.
Good to be here.
So let me just introduce Martin. So Martin is the director of developer relations for GitHub, where he helps developers and open source maintainers get the most of GitHub. So recent program, GitHub Stars program, is actually driven by Martin, so which is really great. And before that, Martin was executive director of .NET Foundation, helping drive Microsoft's move towards open source. And he has also co-authored 6 books related to DevOps and build automation. So that's really great. I remember you are the first one who created, I think, the entire Microsoft organization and the shift to open source, right?
Yeah, the Microsoft GitHub org actually ran off my personal credit card for a little while. So yeah, that was a while. That was July 2014, I think we created that. So pretty amazing growth, really, because I was in charge of Coplex back then, which was kind of Microsoft's open source hosting, and create a GitHub account and sort of that was originally it was the TypeScript project we put there first. That was the first kind of project that went over, and then I think we grew it from that. So that was like project number one, and there's nearly 10,000 projects there. There's like 20,000 Microsoft engineers on it, I think. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. So it's all good stuff. So, yeah.
Hope they didn't purchase GitHub from your credit card.
Yeah, it's not on my credit card anymore, thankfully. I could have done with a lot of those air miles. That'd have been fantastic, especially if we bought it on my credit card. That would have been amazing. I could have retired on those air miles, but no, sadly not.
Cool. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So
Yeah.
first question, right? So what is GitHub Actions? So we have been hearing a lot about GitHub Actions from last few years. I think last year a lot. So can you just introduce us what GitHub Actions are?
Sure. So GitHub Actions is it's the automation platform that's built into GitHub. So any repository, you have the ability to create automation. So a lot of people use this for continuous integration. So for taking your source code and then building it, and then deploying it or deploying it out to the cloud, AWS or Azure or GCP or whatever, or testing it and all that sort of stuff. So that's what a lot of people use it for. But the important things about Actions is it's more than just CI and CD. It's automation for anything that happens in GitHub. So if you have any event that is triggered in GitHub, it creates what's called a webhook. So if you've been playing with GitHub and you've done any kind of integrations, you've seen these webhooks. Actions allows you to run any automation when any event in your GitHub repository happens. So an example might be if you've got, say, so as well as CI/CD, which is what most people use it for today. If you've got, say, somebody creates an issue, you might want to do something automatically if that issue gets created. It was really handy if you're an open source maintainer. If they've created an issue, maybe you can check it to see if they've filed a bug, or maybe you've got a pull request, and maybe perhaps for your project you want it so that every pull request has to create an issue first to decide if this is something we want to do. And so you could have some automation which ran when a pull request that gets created to say, hey, is there an issue attached? If not, leave a comment that says, what issue is this for? Please leave an issue, and all that sort of stuff. So you can automate everything that happens. People do things in really, really crazy, cool ways. Like I was talking to one infrastructure team, because, obviously, it's not just for GitHub's not just for developers, it's for ops people as well, and everybody else. Talking to an infrastructure team, and they'd actually set it up so that the way that people request infrastructure in their cloud instance, they don't want to hand out admin keys to their cloud instance, because people could really, really quickly rack up bills, and they want to make sure infrastructure is set up in a particular controlled way. So what they do is they have people create an issue following a certain issue template, because GitHub has the ability to provide a template for your issue, so you can fill out a form, basically. So they have people create an issue following a certain template, and then they have an action which reads that issue that's been created in the template, checks it's been formatted, and then goes and creates all that infrastructure in their cloud subscription, and then drops a link back into it and gives them access and sets up permissions and sets up logging and sets up everything else, and then leaves a link back in the issue that says, here you go, here's the infrastructure, it's created for you, and and there's no humans involved apart from maybe approving the issue. It's so you can automate lots of things. It's really cool.
Wow. It's like your, what do you call, serverless function which is deployed, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, some people, kind of abuse it to do completely serverless stuff. Like I've seen some people, because you can do scheduled tasks in Actions as well, and then I still see some people doing like a scheduled task every 5 minutes to go check something on the internet, and then if that has changed, update a GitHub Pages site they have, so a website that they're hosting, and update it there. And that works, but that's not kind of really what Actions is designed for. If you're doing that kind of serverless compute, then do that in a serverless compute in the cloud. Don't abuse Actions of that. Actions really is designed to do automation when something happens in your repository, in your organization. So yeah, but it's very, very flexible. It runs on Mac, Windows, and Linux as well. So that's great if you're building, say, an open source project and you want to build it and test it on lots of different operating systems. You can get hold of Mac infrastructure as well as Windows infrastructure and Linux hardware and build it on all 3 operating systems. Use different distributions of Linux, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, super powerful and completely free. If you're an open source project, it's completely free for you to use. Whereas for an account, you get a certain amount of to use of Actions on in terms of minutes for your private projects, but for public projects it's completely free. So just go play with it, and we'll have a play in a minute and just kind of show you how to get started probably.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the advantages. What do you think is the selling point for GitHub Actions?
So probably mentioned some of them there. It runs on Mac, Windows, and Linux. So you get all the operating systems. So it's the only cloud hosted build provider that gives you all 3. It also is more than just builds. It can automate anything that's in GitHub, and it's baked right into GitHub. So all you have to do is create an Actions configuration file, and then it runs. You don't have any infrastructure to set up. And more importantly, you don't have any infrastructure to keep up to date. I'm old, as you can tell, and I've set up, Team City and Jenkins, and what was the things before then? Cruise control.net. I've set up every CI server there is in the past, and you kind of have to maintain them. You have them. They kind of usually live on a little box that's kind of running under the desk in somebody's office kind of thing, or gathering dust somewhere, and you kind of forget about it. Maybe don't keep up to date with security patches on it as you should, or that sort of thing. So these are completely kept up to date for you, running the latest stuff, and it's all on demand as well. So if you need, all of a sudden you think, I need a Mac server, you can go get a Mac server right this second, or I need 20 Linux boxes to go run this. You can go get 20 Linux boxes to run this job right now. It's like you say, Santosh. It feels serverless to you as an end user. It's instantly scalable, very easy to use, no cost for an open source project, and just very no additional logins to manage as well, which is important for private projects when you're doing stuff in the enterprise. So yeah, lots of advantages.
Cool. So we already have some products so you have Travis Circle CI. I think Travis is also moving on. They are actually discontinuing that the open source part where they used to give credits. So how it is different from those products?
Yeah, I mean, so you've got different categories of build products. So you have kind of the self-hosted ones. So that's where I would put like Jenkins and Cruise Control and Team City and things like that. And then you have the hosted products, so cloud hosted. So there's pros and cons there already, So with the self-hosted products, you have to install the infrastructure, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But equally, you own that infrastructure, so you can control which prerequisites are on those machines, what's already there, and exactly where those machines are in your network as well. With the hosted build systems, you get all that kind of self-host. You don't have to take care of the machines anymore. It's just provided as a service for you, and it auto scales, which is cool. Where Actions has some advantages is it's built directly into GitHub. It supports all 3 operating systems just out of the box. The major ones, and obviously lots of Linux distributions. It also very easy YAML syntax to use. And you can run actions in like the hosted environments if you want to. If you want to self-host actions and have it running in your own data center, you can use what's called a self-hosted runner as well, and actually run actions inside your data center. So like right here, where's it gone? I have a Raspberry Pi kicking around. In fact, over here, I have a whole cluster of Raspberry Pis. So say if you wanted to run a build on a cluster of Raspberry Pi machines inside of your network, you could just go set that up, and you don't have to just use the cloud hosted. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, and just easy for you to use, and it's cool. And it does more than just CI/CD as well. It responds to any event. So probably the main advantages, I would think. And obviously, the very, very generous limits for public builds as well, for open source builds is another reason to take a look at it.
I mean, I've already seen some like amazing use cases. I think Gina has one. We were discussing about that last time. So yeah. So let's move on to the
Santosh, people have got like examples that they're particularly proud of or they think's cool. I'd love to see them in the chat, and we can go take a look at them. Or maybe even if people have got questions about specific, like, hey, I do this on one type of build system, how do you do it in Actions kind of thing, then give us a shout, and let people know in the Actions as well. Drop a note in there in a comment. Drop a note about how Actions compares to build servers that you're used to. We'd love to hear people's feedback while we're here.
Yeah, cool. So in case anyone has questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah.
I think we will take those. So we have one. So from Serkan, we have one question.
So Serkan's asking if a company wants to go open source and decides to use GitHub as a platform, will the services such as Actions be free? Actions are free for public repos, whether you're using them for commercial use or not. It's free. If you're using Actions on private repos, then you get a certain amount of action minutes for free. And then if you want to use more than that, then you have to pay per minute that you use, is kind of how it works. Now, on the different plans we have, so we have the team plan, and then we have enterprise. You get additional, if you pay to use GitHub, then you get additional action minutes included in that payment, and that usually more than offsets kind of what you're paying for team or for enterprise, for a small team anyway. It's the very, very generous limits that we give there. So so it's free for public repos, but you have to pay to use Actions on private repos is the model.
Cool.
Thanks, Serkan.
So thank you, Serkan, for asking this question. So let's move on to the next question which we have. So what's new in GitHub Action? So we saw a lot of things coming in GitHub Universe, and before that as well. So what are the new additions?
Yeah, so if you want to get the latest, we'll probably if you want to drop a link, Santosh, into the chat for folks. But basically, the Chris Patterson session for GitHub Universe, I'll send you a link and you can send it along. That's a great session to go check out. But basically, the major new things that we announced in December are the ability to use environments. So basically define, staging, production, those sorts of things as environments, and then have workflow visualization, so you can see what jobs are running where things are in the status, and then manual approvals to deploy to different environments. So if you want to, say, have a build set up, and we'll show you how to do this in a minute when we get into demo. If you want to set up a build, so every check-in, it automatically, or every time you merge into main, for example, it automatically takes that code, deploys it into a dev test or a staging environment, but then have it so that you can manually approve pushing that code into production or QA or whatever. You can set those things up now, and it's very, very straightforward. You just go through and define different environments and how to push them. The other cool thing about environments is the ability to set up secrets that are specific to each environment. So within Actions, you can define a secret, and you can say, here's my secret key for deploying, or something like that, or for setting off lights behind me and things like this. You can set those keys as secrets inside of your project. But then what you can also do is say, for an environment, use this secret. And so what's very common is like your deployment secrets, for example, your cloud deployment secret. You might have one secret which you set as the default to use, which is to your dev environment. But then when you want to push to production, you have the secret there stored in the production environment, and then only people that have permissions to execute jobs for that environment are ever able to have jobs which run against that secret. And so that stops you having people who just have access to dev. They can't magically run code that runs against production. You know what I mean? And you can really knock that down. So they're probably the newest things that we can, as we go through and play, we'll probably show you. I keep learning things about Actions. Every single time I use it, I learn something new. So it's all good.
I've seen you playing around with it. So yeah. So, Nirali has this question: I have only been exposed to AWS CI/CD. Does GitHub Actions have anything more to offer? So
yeah, I mean, yes, the AWS CI/CD is cool, and it's quite interesting because it's it's definitely good for deploying into like Lambda functions and things like that. It's got some cool built-in primitives. But yeah, GitHub Actions, it's more than just CI/CD. Anything that happens in your repository, you can do something against. Yeah. Also, there are like 6,500, more than now, actually. Yeah, well over 6,500 actions which are in the GitHub marketplace, so you can reuse other people's code. So maybe you're deploying to AWS Lambda, but then maybe you also want to go push something out to I don't know, Azure's machine learning service, or use Google's speech service, or something like that. You want to integrate everything from lots of different cloud providers. Then GitHub Actions really helps you there. It's all built in again, so you're not locked into a single cloud provider if you're using Actions, and you can take advantage of this huge ecosystem that's out there. And then the things I talked about in terms of the YAML syntax, the way you've got approvals, the way you've got visualization, it's a much richer, much kind of more mature build deployment system, really. So yeah, definitely, Nirali, definitely take a look at it. It's worth having a look at, I think you'll find it quite easy to migrate to as well if you wanted to.
Oh, that's cool. So we will move to the demo part. So let's take a last question from Lars. Yeah. So Lars has this question: local machine execution of GitHub Actions.
So local machine. Well, there's two questions in there, Lars. So Lars is asking about how do you run GitHub Actions and reusable steps. So we'll take two things. So the reusable steps part, right now, there's a thing called composite run steps, which it looks like Lars has already sort of found. That's kind of an ability. So, you can chain actions together. One of the things we're looking at, though, is doing action triggers. So the ability for one action to be triggered by another action, which is probably useful, what I was thinking of. And then the other question was around local execution of GitHub Actions. That's definitely something that's a bit of a pain point right now. You can run a runner locally, but when you're developing an action, when you're building the code that runs in an action, sometimes you can't help thinking, it'd be really cool if I could run this locally and debug it and figure out what's going wrong. You can do that with a local runner, but it's not really, you still have to trigger it from GitHub and it can be quite painful. There is an open source project, which we'll drop a link into, which allows you to kind of run them locally, but there are a lot of limitations to that right now. So this is an area the team definitely want to improve, the kind of edit debug experience for Actions. But it sounds like the kind of questions Lars is asking are fairly sophisticated ones anyway, so it sounds like he's already found these things. So probably he already knows the limits there, I'm afraid. But yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah, so Lars has been playing around a lot with GitHub Actions. Actually, we are working on an open source project, and he is integrating a lot of things.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely an area where we know we want to improve things, and we're working on it for sure.
Cool. So let's move on to the demo part, right? So this is what left. So let's start. How to start writing our first GitHub Actions.
Okay, cool. Let me share my screen. So get the right screen. Hopefully you can see my screen here.
Yes.
Fantastic. Great. Right then. So it's a couple of things. First of all, I was going to show you, this is an action I have. This is called, this is a quick project I've got here. And all these projects I'm showing you today are open source, so we can have a play with them. But I just want to show you how easy it is to just do a simple, build and test and then deploy. This particular one I've got is for a .NET Core website that I'm building and deploying out to the cloud. So if I quickly take a look, I'll just show you what this website looks like. It's pretty simple. It just comes in here and says, right now it's saying hello MVPs. So, we want to fix that and we want to get a better message. So let's come in and we can, just make a quick change in our code. Quite often I do this in a code space, so I can do some edit and debug and all that sort of stuff, but let's try and just do it straight in here. Here we go.
Martin, can you just zoom in a little bit, because I think people are saying that the font is too small, so if you can.
Sorry about that. Yep. There we go. That should be better, hopefully.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting me know. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm going to come in and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to edit the code and then I'm going to do a new deployment. So I've got here, currently it's saying, it says hello world is what I've currently got as my latest dev version. So let me just edit this and I'll say, hello Santosh. There we go. And then it's going to commit that change. And that's going to commit those changes. And as soon as I've done that change, if I look and go to my Actions tab, I've already got a CI build set up, which is going to build and then test that code. So you can see here, it's currently running a build. It's running the build on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Remember I said it's super easy to just get hold of all these build machines. And then this is showing you the fancy new visualization that we have. And it's currently running the build on Mac, Windows, and Linux. So while that's running, let me just quickly come up here. And I'm just going to come in and show you the workflow that runs this. If you want to do a new action as well, we'll quickly show you to do that in a sec. But if I go into GitHub workflows, so this is where all your actions are stored. And I'm going to look at my CI build. And this is just YAML. So I'm going to go and click on edit now, because then we'll see this edit experience we have for the YAML, because it's pretty cool. And there's some cool little tips here. So this is basically saying, so the name is, what is the name of this build? And so you see, I've said named it CI, and that's what shows up, here, CI sort of thing. Oops, there we go. It's all finished. It's all good, which is good. And then I'm running this every time I do a push to the main branch or a branch called releases/star, which you'll see what that is in a second. And I'm also running this on every pull request that targets the main branch. So basically every single time I do a pull request, I'm going to run this build against it. And that allows us to check before we merge a pull request, before we even look at the code to see if it's good or not. I run my build and tests against it. And if it doesn't pass those builds and tests, then, I don't even bother looking at it. I let the person who's doing the PR make sure it passes the CI build first before I even start doing a code review. And then we'll come in here. And then what I'm saying is I've got a build job. And in my build job, I'm defining a strategy, and I'm saying it should run. I'm saying Ubuntu latest Windows and Mac OS. We'll talk about strategies in a minute. And then for every one of the things in this strategy, I'm going to run it. I'm going to run this job on that thing. So Ubuntu, Windows, and Mac. And then I've got 2 steps to my job. My job uses checkout, so it gets a source code. Then it sets up .NET Core. So this was a .NET Core project I happened to build. I happened to write this in. So it sets up .NET appropriate version on that machine. Then it builds it, and then it tests it. So it's coming in. It's very, very simple. Just set up .NET, build, test core. But what if I wanted to do something else? We were talking. Who was it? Who was asking about AWS earlier on? That was. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, there we go. Nurali, yeah. So if I wanted to come in here and I wanted to find, like, if I wanted to do something with AWS every time and do that in the build, I could come in here and maybe I want to run. Nuwali was talking about using AWS code build. So maybe from Actions, I want to run AWS code build for some reason. Maybe that's what I wanted to do. I could actually go do that, and there's an action for doing that already in the marketplace, written by AWS. So AWS write these actions, they make them, they're all available open source, and then these integrations are already there. So basically anything you want to integrate with is usually already in the marketplace. So you can come along, you look at how that's used, uses, blah, blah, blah. What do I want to do? I want to go build this, all that sort of stuff. So you just copy paste that snippet, and then you would paste it into your YAML, and you would just use it there. So it's as simple as that to get started, which is pretty cool. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to set up any prerequisites. Just use it. But I'm happy with that. That works. Oh, the other thing here that's pretty cool. Notice how I'm setting a specific version of .NET. So I'm sort of defining what prerequisites are on this machine here. And that's something I would generally encourage, because quite often, you maybe want to set up specific versions of .NET. Maybe you want to set up specific versions of, Node, that sort of thing. You can do that. And then what's really cool is that with your matrix, as well as OS, you could also do something like version, and then maybe what you want to do here is 3.1.100. And then maybe you also want to do, sorry, I should put these in quotes, really. I'll do that. Maybe you also want to do 2.0. So maybe you want to test with multiple versions of .NET, multiple versions of Node. You can very, very easily do that, and it will matrix those for you. So not just run on Windows, Mac, and Linux, but run on Windows, Mac, and Linux with lots of different versions of the library that you want to test against, and do all those in parallel. And I didn't have to set up any machines. Like, I just got a Mac box for free. I just got all the, I didn't have to set up any of these boxes. I don't have to worry about these boxes ever again. I don't have to keep them up to date because I'm telling it which versions of the operating system I want. Just use the latest. I don't care. Just go use it. You know what I mean? So it's a great way of being able to just very quickly and rapidly scale out. So that was kind of like the CI build, the basic CI build I've got set up there. Ooh, I just need to catch up on the comments here. Here we go. And then I've also set up a publish thing. I always separate my CI builds from my publish. If you're used to using kind of like Jenkins or one of these kind of older CI systems, then quite often people get into a habit of only ever using CI, because only ever using the push, when somebody changes the code, because that's all they kind of did. But because there are so many more triggers with GitHub Actions, you can kind of set it up to do different things. So here I'm saying anytime I push to a new tag called prod star, then I'm going to deploy it. So I can do that quickly now by coming in here, and I'll say I'm going to create a new. I don't know. Let's go back and check that how I have my workflow set up there. So I publish. Yeah, it's doing two things. It's saying either when I push to a production tag, which happens when I create a release, or it's saying I can see this trigger here, workflow dispatch. This is a new manual trigger. So if you define a workflow dispatch trigger, you can manually trigger this workflow. So let's manually trigger the workflow. So I'm going to come into Actions. I'm going to go to Publish. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to run the workflow. And it's saying, where do you want to release, dev, QA, or prod? I'm going to leave it as prod, which is the default. Hit run workflow, and it'll go do a production deployment for me of the latest code. So it's triggered that off. And then if I click on publish again now here, hopefully, it'll show it to me. There we go. It's currently publishing. And this is going to take the code. It's going to rebuild it, and then it's going to publish it out. In this instance, it's publishing out to Azure because that's how I had it set up. But it could publish anywhere. And I'll quickly show you that code that's running while it's publishing, and then we'll go and answer questions again. So if I come back into here, into the code, and I look at workflows, publish, and you'll see how simple this is. So it's just doing setup.NET build, and it's doing it's using a web app deploy, and it's publishing out in this instance to Azure. But I could just as easily publish out to AWS or GCP using the AWS or the GCP actions that are in the marketplace. You could do that. Very, very easy. And what you will notice here is it's actually using a secret. And so I'm happily showing you this live on the internet, my script for doing it, because I know that my publish profile, my secret for deploying to production, isn't available in the workflow file. It isn't available to people who have view access. It's only available, it's locked in, and it's actually stored in the project as an encrypted secret. So I come in here and I can very easily update and add my secrets. So if I go down to secrets, I can very easily, edit them, put a new one in. But what I can't do, notice I can't go here and I can't say, show me the secret. You know what I mean? So it stores it, it encrypts it, and puts it in GitHub and stores it encrypted there, but it doesn't allow you to access those secrets. And so if that allows you, again, even with an open source project, I can have it publishing to my public Azure page without revealing secrets to the world as well. So that's how you kind of externalize these secrets. Lars has said, would it be possible to build a GitHub bot for Discord with Actions? So that's an interesting one, Lars. So yes, but you probably wouldn't. So if you're in Discord, you would be listening to events from Discord that would trigger. And now Discord, you could get that, you could set that up to trigger and issue any kind of webhook. And there is actually an event you can use, which is it's a workflow dispatch trigger. You can actually manually trigger an action from anywhere externally and pass in stuff using webhooks. But for that sort of thing, I would use probably a serverless function, use Lambda, use Azure function, something like that. Because what you're really doing is you're building like a serverless compute. You're not really doing a automation for your repository, which is what Actions is really built for. So hopefully that makes sense. Right, let's just go check and see if that's actually deployed. Sorry, Santosh, I got distracted, and apologies. And you keep me on track for time, by the way. I could chat about this stuff forever. So you let me know how much time we have left and all that.
No, we have a lot of time.
Great, there we go. So this is publishing. So this is coming in here, and I publish to Azure, and that's fine. So that all worked. So then if I come back and I look at my code, if I just go back. If I go back to here and look at the production environment again, then rather than saying hello MVPs, it now says hello Santosh, because that's the code that I've deployed. And if people want to play with this, actually, they can just come in here, and I think it's like m equals hi. Yeah, there we go. You can put whatever message you want in here if you want to have a play. So it's cool. So that's that. That's like the basics, of CI and CD kind of thing. But that's all very cool, and that's just doing one environment. What if we want to get a bit more sophisticated? What sort of things can we do? So what I thought I would do is I'd show you a couple of things. So this one here, this is a project I've got, which is actually deploying to different environments. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to create a new release. And I have a trigger set up so that every time I create a release, so I'm going to say new build or something like that. Every time I create a release in GitHub, it's going to deploy that out to our environment here. So I'm going to draft the release. I'm going to say, so I'm going to tag this as 2021-01-15, I guess it is. And I'm going to say fix footer. I'm pretending I fixed a footer. I could do some release notes, all that sort of stuff. Hit publish release. So that's going to create a point in time that's visible to everybody who looks at our project, where you've got the source code as it was exactly at that point in time, a link to the commit exactly as it was at this point in time, and create a release from it. And then the moment I've done that, we'll actually see, hopefully, yes, it's already deploying that code out. So it's seen that I've created a new release, and it's minified and bundled that code. And now it's deploying that out to a staging environment for us to play with. And this is really deploying it. And then this, it's coming here, doing a deployment. You see it's got a few steps to the deployment, which is showing up here. And then there you go. Now it's got a staging link. So I can click on the staging link because that's in my environment, where I want it deployed. And this is the website that it's deployed. And this is a cool website, actually, myoctocat.dev. It's actually, if you want to put that link in as well for people, Santosh, it's you can do like custom Octocats, which is cool. This is a thing we're playing with where rather than just doing Octocats, configure your own Octocat, this is Octocats as code, because everything has to be as code nowadays. So this allows you to create Octocats using a framework called P5.js. So it's Octocats in JavaScript. And then you can animate them and you can do all sorts of cool things. So you see here are some examples of people who've animated their Octocats and, doing all sorts of cool stuff using P5.js, which is pretty neat. So that's deployed that to the staging environment. So now I'm happy. I think that's awesome. I like that code. I've had a look at it. We can see here, it's asking me for approval to deploy this to production. So I'm going to say, yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to say deploy that to production. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to approve this. Anybody in this particular group are allowed to approve it. Is how I've got this configured. I say, yeah, approve, and then that's going to take that code and now push it out into production and then deploy out to production. So we'll just quickly watch that happen, and then I'll show you the magic of how this actually works, and we'll dig into that a bit more. But this was new features we added in December. So there you go, deployed into production. Click on that link there, and then we'll come in and boom, that version's out in production and running for everybody to see, which is pretty cool. So how this works is, thanks for dropping the link, Santosh, really appreciate it. How this works is it's using a new thing called environments. Now, these are only available if you have sort of enterprise, GitHub Enterprise, but they're available in your enterprise organization. And you can define an environment as, so I've got staging and production. And then, so for example, for production, I've got my environment. I say, before you can deploy to production, you must have had a review from this team is what I've defined, or I can set up specific people, like I could put your name in. Maybe as well, you need to wait 24 hours. Quite often people have a, wait between going from, say, staging to production, wait at least 24 hours so that you've had time to find any bugs or anything like that. That's not common. And then what you've also noticed I've got here is I've defined like the database password and the deployment key. I've defined those as secrets, which are specific to that environment. So I've got these in both staging and production, but the values are different in staging and production. So in my workflow code, I just refer to those secrets. but actually the value that's in them changes depending on the environment that I'm targeting. And then if I show you an example one of what it actually does, this is actually the one I've got up in here is the one I'm going to show you actually is a mock-up one. But if I come in and quickly show you, so we'll come in, we're doing the minify. So what you see this environment colon is the new. Oh, I made that bigger. Sorry, environment colon is the new thing, and I give it a name. So that refers to the name that I defined in the project settings, and then what the location is, and that's how we tell it that it's running on a particular environment. That's all it is. Super simple. But yeah, so there we go. So that's actions. That's CD. Any other questions in the chat? Feel free. I don't think there is right now. Otherwise, I'm gonna. Yeah, we talked about the Discord one, I think. Otherwise, what I think I'll do is I can show you some other cool things you can do in actions if you want. If you keep going, and then yeah.
Sure.
Have you got any questions, Santos? Sorry, I've just been talking here. I get excited about stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's really cool stuff. I mean, you can also see we safely deployed a website on production on Friday. Isn't that?
It's mad, isn't it? And what's even better, but it's not just. So if I go back, it's not just that you deployed a website to production on Friday, which is cool. And yeah, it's what time is it? It's after, it's late for you. But it's after 5 o'clock my time as well. So, and not only did we deploy to production on a Friday, we also know exactly which version was deployed. And then if we look at our environments, we know exactly which version was deployed there and why. What changed between those, between the last two deployments. If I have issues that were linked to my changes, that all gets as well. So it's not just, not just what's deployed where, but what changed, why did you change those things? And so you have this end-to-end traceability of what's running in production and why, which is really, really, really powerful. And it's exactly what you need, when you're deploying things. Yeah, any other questions about this, Santos, before I'll dig in? And I could show some more cool things that we do in the team. But yeah.
Not as of now, but yeah, we can go ahead, and in case we have any, we'll take that.
Yeah, so let's have a quick play. So we'll talk about let's talk about matrices first, and then we'll talk about the other things you can automate and some things that I do. So here we have let's quickly go. I'll show you the code for the matrix, and then we'll come and have a look at it. Again, this is available, Martin Woodward /actions. If you want to take a look, just go and have a quick look. But if I go and have a look at my workflows, I'll have a look at this matrix. So previously, I was using, just one. I was using operating system as the thing that I was varying. But maybe what you want to do is say, use different versions of dependencies. Maybe you're using different Kerberos libraries or different versions of curl, different versions of your compiler, and you want to build and test your code against all these different things. Like having those matrices is an absolute nightmare to test against normally, and really, really, painful for any open source project. That's usually quite often, the thing that I use is the thing that gets tested a lot, but then I'll quite often have it built and deployed for lots of different operating systems and environments that I'm not using every day. I'm just using, say, a Mac. I'm not using the Windows one. I'm not using the Ubuntu one every day, but I want to build and test and make sure I don't have any mistakes. So I've set up a matrices that's like GCC and Glang, and then another one that's different curl versions, and then another one that's different Kerberos versions. And so by setting up a matrix that's got 3 variables, you can think of it like a grid where you've got 3 down, and then I've got 2 on one of them, I've got 3 on another. What actions will do is it will run this job for every single permutation of those 3 things, and every single one, and it will run them in parallel. For as many runners as you have access to. It'll just go run them, and it'll divide all that work out and run it. And so if we go, actually, this is doing it's for some C code. It'll pick a particular C compiler. It'll go particular Kerberos library and go run it. But if I go look at actually what that looks like when that actually happens, so if I go to matrices here, I'm going to manually trigger it because I have a workflow dispatch trigger. So I'm going to kick this workflow off. That's a top tip, by the way. If you're doing actions, add the workflow dispatch trigger, because then you can just manually trigger a build to go run. You don't have to edit files to trigger it. You can just manually trigger it to make sure you can test if it's worked. So that's run. I'm just going to hit refresh on it to see what it's running. There we go, running the matrix build. And we see 0 to 12 jobs. So you can see here, if I do show all, you see it's running all these different jobs in parallel. I'm going to dig in and go look at one that's running. It's currently running setup job, and it's currently running parallel. Yeah, Lars is saying you should pull up the Lumberjack matrix. I imagine that's pretty intense. I can bring that up. I was looking at that the other day, actually. I was looking at the Lumberjack project the other day, and yeah, it is pretty intense. Here we go. So here's some finished already. So that one's finished already, and you sort of see them randomly finishing and going green as we go through. So that's gone and done all that stuff. We see all the different versions of stuff that it's done, and you'll notice you've got different here. So these are the ones that have successfully completed. These are the ones that are currently running, and then this one here is currently waiting a free runner to go run, and then once the machine's free, it'll just go manage it. But I didn't have to manage all those build machines or anything like that. It just automatically happens for me because I've defined a matrix. And then if I want to magically just go pick a different thing, or maybe I want to take, libcurb5 out of my matrix and use something else, I can just go delete that, and it'll just take it out of the list of things I'm building and supporting, which is pretty cool. Yeah. The next thing I want to show you is, remember, it's not just for builds. Although people don't use it for. It's something we do on our team. So I have a globally distributed team, that I'm a part of, and I've got friends, colleagues who are in all the way from Australia through, India, through Europe, through all across the United States, and there isn't a single time of day that we're all awake at the time. Not a single, never. Because we're just spread across all those different time zones. And so what we tend to do is kind of do our weekly kind of check-ins as to what we want to do this week. We do it asynchronously using GitHub issues, so that then the rest of the team, you sort of say, these are the things I want to accomplish this week. And then that helps you communicate with the rest of the team so people can see what everybody else is working on. So to do that, what we do is we have an issue which we create every week, which is our weekly top 5. It's just basically a stand-up in a GitHub issue. So what things you want to go do. So maybe it's demo with Santosh. Oh, this is cool. Look, now this is a new feature we just added recently. So if I say I'll do, it's automatically put the little thing in here to tell me I want to do a new task list. That was new last week, I think, as a feature. So demo with Santosh. Maybe I want to do, test actions, drink tea, eat cookies, and sleep. Maybe that's my top 5. Maybe not in order of priority, but that's the top 5 things I want to do this week. So I've left a comment now. They're the top 5 things I'm going to go do. And then I can do those, and I can check them off. I can reorder them, all that sort of stuff. That's kind of how we work. But what happens is every week we want a new top 5, and it's boring creating things and assigning them, and that's a job for robots to do. That's not something like I as a manager should be doing. So how do we do that in our team? So a friend of mine called Brian Douglas, actually created an action to help us do this. So if I go look at the code that runs, so every single week we have here, I'm going to go to workflows, and I'm going to say top 5. So the first thing it does is it runs, see, it's cron job. So it runs on a schedule. Now, I don't know about you, Santosh, but I can never remember the cron syntax. Like every time I do it, I have to look up the man page for it. Can you remember it? Are you a nerd enough to do that?
No.
Okay, I'm pretty nerdy, and I can never remember the cron syntax. So top tip again, if you want to know when this is going to run, go in and do an edit, and there's actually a cron syntax helper for you in the editor. So it tells you it runs at 1 minute past 1 UTC on a Sunday. Boom, easy, you know. So yeah, and then if I change that to 1. And then hover over it. Now it's 1 minute past 1 UTC on a Monday. So there we go. So that's going to run every Sunday lunchtime. It runs and it creates a new issue. The reason why we do it at 1 minute past 1 on a Sunday UTC is because that's in Australia. That's just before Monday starts. You know what I mean? So that's the reason. But we also do it. We don't do it on a Friday, because if we did it on a Friday, then people in Pacific time maybe haven't finished yet, you know, for the so that's why we pick 1 minute past 1. And then we come in here, and then we're executing a task, and we're using actions checkout v2, and this is how we do new tasks. So we notice here we've got bdougie close issues based on label at master. And you can go, oh, hello, I'm starting to understand what's going on here. So we're going to dig into both of these things in a second. So the first thing it does is it closes the previous issue, and then it creates a new issue. And then when it's created an issue, it looks in our issue templates and finds a template issue that we've got and uses that to create the next one. And within that template, I'm just going to quickly show it to you, and then I'll go dig in and we'll look at how the actions work. So within my GitHub folder, issue template, top 5. So this is issue templates are where you can go and you can create things, so that when you create a new issue, it gives you a set of templates to use for creating them. But in here I have it, and I have like some custom YAML front matter that basically says, you know, what are we doing and why, sort of thing. So, this is what I've got here. I've got some YAML front matter that says name, about, title, labels. So our action uses this YAML front matter and uses it to create the issue. It creates it with this title, it applies this label, and it assigns these people. So you can do like a comma-separated list of people you want to assign it to. And then it puts that in the body of the issue. So that's simple. And then, but if I quickly have a look and I go in, like, how's that working? So you'll notice this uses, for all of these actions we've been doing, we kind of been using actions. But if we actually have a look here, and if I come in and I'm just going to go, if I go to github.com, whack, and I'm going to go Command V, so I'm going to paste that. It's org/repo. So this is the action. And this is the source code for that action as well. And then if I go to, you know, there's like /v2 and /v3 and all that sort of stuff. Here, all I'm doing by doing @v2 is I'm saying use the action that's been labeled v2 to use a specific version of it. But if I wanted to always use the latest version of the checkout action, I could easily just come in here and say, rather than v2, I can just say @main, and it's going to use the very, very latest version of that particular action. So that's cool. And then here you've got uses bdougie / so this is bdougie is my buddy that wrote this particular act. So if we go here and we go look at what that is, I'm just going to go to there, bdougie, oops, did that wrong. Here we go. So Lars is asking, is there a helpful extension for VS Code, for example, for workflows? Yes, there is. I'll find you that now while you're asking, Lars. So if you go to VS Code Marketplace, it's not an official one. It's done by, Christoph on the team. Yeah. And I think it's actions. I think it is. Let me find it. So yeah, this cool editor experience I was showing you inside of the browser, you can actually have a very, very similar editor experience. Actions, sorry. In Visual Studio Code, if that's your preferred editor. Come on. I'm trying to remember. There it was. I just saw it then. It'll come back in a second. Sorry, me. There we go. Yeah, Christopher. Sorry. So Christopher works on the team, but this is what he sort of does in for me. I'll just drop this into our chat, Santosh, and then you can share it out with everybody. There you go. Just send it to you there. So that's a cool action. You install that. It gives you all of the syntax highlighting, all the autocomplete stuff that you're used to inside the editor. It gives you inside the VS Code as well, which is pretty nifty. So I really love that extension. So, great question, Lars. Fantastic. Right. So we'll go back to this BDoughy closed issues based on labeling. This is his action here. And if you want to go look at the code that's doing stuff, we can go look at the action. This one was written in Ruby, and all it's doing is it's just saying, get the client, use the secret I've been passed in, list the issues. For every issue, close it and remove the label. Done. That's all it's doing. And so it's super simple. And what's even better is once you know that trick, you can really easily see what any action is doing. You know, if I wanted to know how the checkout action is doing, I just go look at the source code for it. If I want to know how AWS's actions work, I just go look at the source code for it. And then that also helps you when you're trying to figure out, like, how do I pass variables in and all that sort of stuff. You just go look at them and do it. And it's so easy to go write a new action. You know, it's just a repo. It's just code. You just have it available as source code. And then the trick is you have an action YAML file, and then the action YAML file is the thing that defines it. It tells you what it looks like when it's in the marketplace. And then your entry point SH says what it should do when it runs. And in this case, it's installing OptiKit, and then it's running Ruby, and off it goes, and then it executes the action. So there we go. Simple, eh? I know I'm taking loads of time here, Santos, and I've just been chatting, but any other questions on it? There's lots of tips I could point you to on here, but this is just, I just love this stuff. Yeah, sure. We will love to. Actually, I'll just add those into description so people can refer it to later on. Yeah. But amazing. I mean, I was not aware of that. It points to a GitHub repository. I have written GitHub Action in past. Really? But yeah. So I did it for my open source project, and I was like, okay. So it might be some syntax, right? So you have checkout /v2 @v2, and I was like, okay, maybe some syntax which we have, but I was really not aware that it was a GitHub repository. No here at all. It's literally just pointing to the GitHub repos. That's what's great. Yeah, actually. And then I'll show you this here. Look, this one here. Like, if I wanted to go to a specific commit ID, so rather than locking to a label, like, there's an example of me going to a particular version of that action that is that exact cryptographic hash. So I know that this is never going to change out from under me. Whereas if I go to /main or something, you know, the main branch, that could change, and then that could break my issue. That could break my action without me knowing it. So if you did it to a specific commit ID, you know that that's never going to change. Equally, you know you're never going to get any free features and free bug fixes from it. So I quite often use labels, use tags, and then rely on the action author, so that every time this V2 one basically means I know that any new tags under V2 are going to be backwards compatible with V2. And so we saw there was a 2.2, 2.2.1, 2.2.2, all that sort of stuff. And it's common to use semantic versioning with inside of your actions to make sure you can, like, and then have multiple labels pointing to different versions, so you can pick the latest and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah. So, yeah, there we go. Do you want me to look at the Lumberjack run above? Do you want me to go look at the Lumberjack right now, do you, or something? Should I go look at that? Let's go take a look. Which one is it? I can't remember. It's I think the first one. Yeah. Is it that one? Nope. It's not that one, is it? It's like Lumberjack /Lumberjack or something like that. I seem to remember. Yeah, actually. So I have the link. Just, I think. NG worker /Lumberjack. Thanks, Lars. I share your sentiment. Yeah, I shared it in chat. Oh, brilliant! Thank you. That's the one. Yeah. Oh, Hang on a sec. Okay, so let's go have a look at this. This was frightening me, but this does a bunch of stuff. You want to remember? Sorry. If I go, let me look at an actions run. We're going to look at the past one. Let's see what's happening. Okay. So, whoa, okie doke. Yeah, that's not too bad. But that's doing exactly that. That's doing, I'm guessing that's NPM versions and node versions, is it? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'll go, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
actually. And so we are building libraries, apps, and E2E in parallel.
And and that's what's pretty cool is you sort of see, and what you're using here is you've got the Matrix app, and then you've also got. I find the scrolling in this new visualization thing is not quite there yet. But if I just collapse that back again, how's that? No, okay. For some reason, it's not wanting to collapse on me. So if I show people how that's working, because that's using the uses thing to set up that it's dependent on the previous step. So if we go look at the workflow for this, CI, so we'll see here it's setting some options for Node up. There you go, Node and Angular. Okay. Yeah. So the different versions, and then. Oops. Oh, okay. That's because it's only doing it for one version. But there you go. Whatever. So you see here, it's got the lint first of all, job that's happening, and then build that's always happening on one version, and then the lib. Here we go. So lib runs on Ubuntu latest. Node version 12.x and an Angular versions, all those different Angular versions there. But you see, for people that are following along online, because. Oh no, that's lib. Yeah, that's lib. So that's at the basic. Then we've got app. It needs build to finish. So what they're doing is they're specifying build is needed before it'll go on to that next step. So that means that the entire this job here has to have completed before and successfully completed before it then triggers the app run. And that's how you chain things. That's how you parallelize them. And if you want to do, there's some cool tips. Again, I'll drop this in here. One of my friends, Ed Thompson, did a fantastic series of he did 30 days of different things with actions. Because when you're doing these jobs, you can chain dependencies. That's the jobs run on different machines, and then actions automatically parallelizes them for you, which is cool. But what if you want it so that if, for instance, by default, if it fails on, say, the Mac build, it will automatically fail the whole run for you, because if it fails the Mac thing, it assumes you want to cancel all your other runs, and so it quite often doesn't do that. But maybe for your open source project, you wanted it to go run. If it fails on one of those, you still want it to run all the other builds, because you want to know exactly which matrices of things is good and bad, So what you can do is you can disable fail fast matrices, which I don't think you're doing. So you can say fail fast equals false, and then that way it will run every single thing in that matrix, regardless of if one of them has failed or not. Please don't enable that by default, which is why by default it's set to true. But because if you think that's incredibly wasteful, if you're gonna run a build on 50 different machines, it's cool. But if it's going to fail on them all, that's also pretty crummy, because we only have. I mean, it's a very, 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 very big pool of automated machines, but it's a finite pool of machines we donate to open source. And so every time you're using one of those open source build agents, it's sort of stopping another open source project from using one of those build agents or slowing them down. So don't abuse them, but do use them. They're there for everybody to use, but just know, don't use it wastefully, if you know what I mean. But fail fast is cool if you then wanted to test on, run the build and make it run against every single operating system, even if it failed on one of them, or every single node version, even if it failed on one of them. That's pretty cool. But yeah, that list of tips I gave you there, it's a very cool one, Lars. I hope you like it. it's good. And I'm just quickly checking here. Yeah, no. Cool. Any other questions, Santosh? I know I've gone way over time, but I've just been having fun with you. So yeah, hopefully this is okay.
Yeah, actually. So I'm learning a lot of things today as well, Martin. So thanks a lot for actually giving us extra time, and I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of developers as well.
Cool.
So yeah, before we move ahead, I mean, we'll just wrap up. But I have last question. So let's say my organization, right? So they are already using Azure DevOps.
Yep.
And now GitHub is part of Microsoft. So what in case I want to move away from Azure DevOps and I want to actually start using GitHub Actions and everything for my build pipelines?
Yeah. So the key difference is, so in Azure DevOps, they have a thing called Azure Pipelines. Yeah. And Azure Pipelines is similar syntax, the YAML syntax, and it's actually under the hood. It's the same technology which we brought over, kind of thing. So that's how we know it scales. And in fact, those build agents, the runners are exactly the same runner that in the same. So it shares a lot of history from the pipeline stuff. But there's two things. Pipelines will run against any version control system, whether it's GitHub or Azure repos or heck Subversion or whatever, you know what I mean? It'll run against anything. GitHub Actions only runs against GitHub because it's built into GitHub. However, it runs against any GitHub event, whereas Pipelines is, CI/CD is just version control kind of thing. So there's some pros and cons there, first of all. And then the syntax is slightly different. I'll find it and I'll send you the link so you can share it with everybody. But there is actually somebody's written an open source tool that'll help you make a first job at converting from one to the other. The syntax is different but similar. But the thing is that GitHub Actions kind of is a lot simpler and it's more straightforward kind of thing. And it also has this community of, like I say, over 6,500 actions available for you. So whereas in Azure Pipelines, you might have done something manually or used some custom logic that you've written, odds are somebody else has maintained a public open source one of these actions that's already out there. And maybe rather than using your custom logic, you want to be using theirs. And so there's the translating the YAML syntax over, and then there's using the best action available to do this, or doing it in the best way possible to do this. So there's kind of like a manual step there. So what I would recommend is get the source code over. You can actually mirror the source code if you wanted to, but get the source code into GitHub first. And then once the source code's in GitHub, that's when you can start picking up actions. But the good news is you don't have to. You can move the source code over and still have Azure Pipelines referring to it, and then use actions for new automation. And then when you want to update your build, you can go and do that. But you don't have to do it on day one. It's not this big, migration thing that you have to worry about. So, yeah.
Okay. And do they need to subscribe or pay something extra to use to migrate from Azure DevOps to GitHub?
If you're doing it for private stuff, I mean, you can do private repos in GitHub for free to begin with. But then you might run out of build minutes pretty quickly, depending on how many builds you have. So you might have to pay extra build minutes depending on that. So, but it's really easy to get started and just try out. And then once you're happy with it, then you can go, okay, let's use this for everybody. So, yeah.
Oh, so there is no extra cost. I mean, if you are
sure, and once you want to move everybody over, yes, you have to be using that. But if you're moving a large company over, go talk to from something like you're in the Microsoft world, especially. Then go talk to your like the GitHub sellers and the Microsoft sellers kind of thing. Okay. You're the people you work with, because there's all sorts of things available for you there. But I tend not to get involved in sales. I tend to just focus on creating playing with the technology. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Martin. So last thing, I mean, in case you want to promote anything in our channel, so.
Yeah, I think probably if you haven't already, say go to this blog series I mentioned here for Ed. Follow me on Twitter at Martin Woodward, and then I'll include links to there in terms of different cool places to go to learn more about actions. And I'll also drop a link into the GitHub Universe video that Chris Patterson did that shows you about all the new features we added to actions. Top tip that we've actually covered most of those, but Chris probably does a better job of explaining them than I did. So there we go.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Martin. So Lars says he enjoyed the episode. So Lars was the actually host for our first episode of 2021, and so thanks a lot, Lars, for doing that.
Yeah, and appreciate you keeping us company.
Yeah. So Lars actually loves to work with Microsoft. He's one of the MVPs as well for Microsoft. Yeah. Cool.
Fantastic. Well, I used to be an MVP too, Lars, back in the day. So back when I had a real job. So yep.
Cool. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. And let me just tell you about the next episode. So we are going to meet again next Friday, 10 p.m. IST, and we will be talking about PWAs. So in case you are interested to learn about PWAs, it won't be framework or library specific. It will be general, what service worker does, or what how you can use something else like Workbox. So if you're interested, join us. We will be having our guest Pato, who is like a Google developer expert and who is a great friend of mine. So he'll be joining us next Friday. So see you, everyone. I think Eddie just hopped in. Hey Eddie.
Hey Eddie, you missed the party. It was great. Sorry, dude. You have to get me on your channel sometime. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you spending Friday night with us. And thanks, Santosh, for staying up late and chatting about this stuff. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone. And see you next Friday.